All right, brethren, I don't have snacks today, okay? I know that's the only reason you guys got those squirms for snacks. Actually, we're gonna do an activity that that's primary. We're gonna do an activity that I hope will lead to a good discussion about what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna start with, is there anything that anyone needs to bring up with the group for the day?
Elder and Sister Lindsay mentioned it up at the pulpit. They're going to be handing out those magnets, the daily reminders. They're going to be handing them out first in Relief Society, have a household member in Relief Society. Be sure to reach out so that you can get one of them. I think it'll be a good thing to have in our homes to kind of just remind ourselves of our World Mission plan.
Thank you. Excited. Anything else? We have a visitor, Brother Farnorth. Did you have a?
Oh yeah, this is my brother-in-law Nathan. They're visiting.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. We're going to have a discussion. Well, we're going to start with. Sometimes we are not good at talking about. Sometimes we don't like to talk about things that we're good at, our talents, our skills. So I want everyone, the assignment is for everyone to give me at least one thing that you are good at, or at least enjoy. Maybe you're not even good at it, but it's something that you enjoy.
Maybe you think you're good at it.
Yeah, exactly. So what's one thing that you are good at? Just start yelling.
Giving advice to others.
Giving advice. That's good. Keep going. Art.
Video editing.
Video editing. Keep going. Music.
Mechanical stuff. Martial arts.
Martial arts.
Okay, Chuck.
Chuck, what are you good at? Come on.
Well, I'm good at like thinking about things and
Pondering.
yeah,
That's good.
there you go.
I'm a good people person. I don't always like dealing with people, but I'm good at it. So we're gonna say dealing with people, more of a customer service kind of a thing. What else? What are things you're good at? Ken, what are you good at? Assisting those in need. Come on, what skills do you have? What are things that you guys are good at? Singing.
We're afraid to tell you.
Listen, I'm keeping a master list. You have no idea. What about your grandkids? Loving grandkids. That's a good one. Loving your grandkids. That's an important one. What else are you guys good at? Come on, you guys got skills, talents.
How about making things work, making it happen,
Getting stuff done.
whatever it takes.
Getting stuff done. Overcoming challenges. Good. What else? Planning.
How about just like listening to people, some people?
Listening. That is a really important skill. What else are you good at? Delegating. That's a good one. Brother Asituno, what are you good at? What's something that you can do, that you like to do? Gardening. Perfect. Corey, what's something that you're good at? Cooking. I'm not good at spelling or handwriting, so
It's all good.
don't worry about that. Anything else? Something that you're like, no, it's okay to talk about the things that you're good at. What are you good at? Taking care of animals. My pen was go. Caring for animals. It's just on the top of your head that you're like, no, I'm good at this.
I'm good at
Procrastinating.
That's That's something to be proud of. We all have. We don't have it.
Procrastinating. Yeah, I think you're right.
Swimming? Swimming. Okay. That's a fairly decent list. I think there's more stuff on here that we could get out of you if we really talked for a while. But we're going to link this to something that we're actually going to talk about. But in the reading this week for Come Follow Me, one of the things that Jesus was talking about was getting ready for the second coming and being prepared. And one of the parables he talked about was the parable of the talents, right? Now, the talents means it's a weight of money, right? A weight of coin. But that's how the word talent came into the English language, is because of that parable. And so in that parable, if you read it this week, I think we've all read it at some point in our lives, the parable of the talents. What are we supposed to do with our talents? Chuck, use them, right? For what?
To bless other people.
Bless other people, right? So the servant that was given, Brother Black.
I would go further and say we're meant to use them and increase them.
Increase them. That's very important. In that parable, right? Again, I can't spell. The servant that was given 5 came back with 10. The one was given 2 came back with 4. But the one that was given 1, he got scared, right? And he said, well, I don't want to lose the one that I have, the talent, the amount of money that I have. So I'm just going to hide it, bury it in the earth, and then hopefully present it back to my Lord and say, well, at least I didn't lose what you gave me, right? It's like if you leave the house for a couple hours and maybe give your kids some assignments. You say, hey, I need you to do laundry, I need you to do dishes, and you to fold the clothes, or like something, right? And 2 of your kids are doing their job, and one of them just goes, well, I didn't burn the house down. Now, some of you might have kids where you go, okay, I will accept that from you. Most of the time, we want our kids to produce, right? If you are an employer or you're a manager, you want your team to produce. That's the whole point. So the Lord is saying, take what you have and produce, okay? We're going to relate this to the topic that we're going to talk about today. So hopefully, if you received the email that I sent out, and I was actually talking to Brother Montgomery just a minute ago, he does not receive the email. So the church, the system the church uses to send out emails, it's been kind of wonky for like a couple of years now. And the church just has a banner on the app that says, hey, this may not work, but they don't know how to fix it, or they won't fix it. So some of you may not get the automatic emails that are pushed out. So when we meet for Elders Quorum, the weeks that we meet, usually a couple days before, I will send an email out with, hey, this is the topic that we're going to be discussing. If you don't get those, let me know, because what I can do is after the fact, I can forward it to you specifically individually from my email, and it should go through just fine after that. But the talk we're going to talk about is from this last conference in April, Elder De Hoyo's, The Work of the Temple and Family History, One and the Same Work. Does anybody need a printed copy? I have a couple printed copies. So the first part of it, we're not going to talk a lot about what he talks about at the beginning, because he's just kind of setting the stage for the doctrine of the restoration of temple and the family history work. Does anybody have a copy that's written in orange? Because I may have given someone my copy. Okay.
I got some with
Yellow.
twice made in orange.
Ah, that's fine. Perfect. Get an inch. Okay, what do you do? All right. All right. So again, he is just kind of establishes the doctrine of temple and family history. But later on, there's a section that says the temple and family history, and then down below there's a couple paragraphs. It says President Boyd K. Packer taught this signal event, which is talking about the restoration of Elijah giving the keys to Joseph. It says, this single event went unheeded by the world, but would influence the destiny of every soul who has ever lived or ever will live. Things began to quietly to happen. The church became a temple building church. In the world, there emerged here and there, in a way thought to be spontaneous, people and organizations and societies interested in tracing genealogies. This has all taken place since the appearance of Elijah in the Kirtland Temple. So when I was a kid, the only time I ever heard the word genealogy was in a church setting. And the only time I've heard talk about family history was in a church setting. And I remember being in maybe high school, and there was a national push on just, it was before like ancestry.com and stuff. But there were organizations that were like ancestral genealogical organizations, and they were starting to use the internet, and it's very early days, to access these records. And I just remember being kind of weirded out because this was like a church thing that I saw on like a national ad campaign one time. And I was like, that's weird, right? It's very weird. And so that's what this elder is talking about, is that the Lord is blessing us in this day. People are, since the 1800s, since Elijah gave those keys to Joseph, that people are becoming interested in their family history. They're becoming interested in genealogy and doing this work to trace things. I remember my mom was not active in the church when I was a kid, but she was a legal secretary, and she was a real fast typer. So she'd type 80, 90 words a minute, like it's sick, right? And so one of the ways that the church would kind of keep her interested and kind of keep her around was they were doing the French extraction. They were extracting French records from like microfiche. And so my mom would go to the church building at like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and these old ladies like basically transcribe the records as you're looking at microfilm and transcribe stuff. And she did this not as an active member of the church, but just kind of to help out. And it kept her in contact with members of the church, but my mom found it really interesting. Family history work, right? What is it? That's what I want to talk about. What is family history, and what is family history work? Genealogy. What is it? What do we do?
Trace our ancestors back.
Trace our ancestors back, right? So usually if someone's doing like a very basic class, they talk about your, 4 generations back, right? Your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. That's kind of where they start, right? Come on in, brothers, come on in. And so that's kind of the basic thing to start with. My grandparents, I did not grow up with grandparents. My mom's dad died when I was 2. My dad's dad died when I was about 4. And then my mom's mom died when I was 6. And then my dad's mom got Alzheimer's and lived in a home until I was about 14, but I never really knew her. And so I was always kind of jealous of those kids that I went to school with who like went over to grandma's house every day after school and got to like have those fun adventures, because I didn't grow up with grandparents, right? But I learned about my grandparents through my parents' stories. The one thing I do remember about my mom's mom, like I said, she died when I think I was 6 or 7. She would come visit us. She lived in Reno. She'd come visit us every year or so. And she was a really heavy smoker. And she drove this, I don't know, maybe 1985, 1986 blue Honda Civic. It was a stick. And because she smoked, she always needed to, even when she was driving, she needed to be doing something with her hands. And so you drive with her and she'd fidget with the stick, just at red lights, right? Just fidget up and down. Like, this is one of the things I remember about my mom's mom. Also, she was such a heavy smoker that like my grandma would come to visit, and then my grandma would leave, and then my mom would like spray the house with Lysol, just because she was such a heavy smoker, right? She'd leave the smoke there. I remember I was in kindergarten. No, it was first grade. She died. I was in first grade, so it was kindergarten. We had an activity where we got to play with we made pottery, right? We got to play with clay, and then we got to like decorate it, and they fired it in a kiln. So I was a kindergartner. I made my grandma an ashtray, right? And it was cool because I remember doing it. I made the ashtray just a thing with like the little walls of it are like this tall, but I left a hole where she could leave her cigarette, right? Like that was a cool idea. So after she died, like I got that as part of my stuff. So now I have it somewhere still as this very poorly made ashtray that's only like half fired. Like it's pretty delicate. But I remember, so I've learned about my grandparents from my parents, right? When they tell stories, that's how I've learned about who my grandparents are. My mom is not into family history. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like to do it. But years ago, this was before Facebook and everything and before social media, my family got into emails. And so 20, 25 people on emails, and there'd be family emails going back and forth all day. Like, I don't think anybody actually did their jobs. People are emailing from their work. This is like before like work IT security was really like, hey, probably shouldn't use personal emails at work. Like or you're sending personal emails from your work emails, right? Like this is before a lot of changes happen. So my mom and her siblings and my cousins and stuff would just email all day long, just huge email chains. Kind of like texting now, but this is through email. And so my mom created a subfolder in her email that said family history. And so during the course of a conversation of just day-to-day stuff, someone might say, oh, hey, remember when dad this? Or remember when uncle so-and-so did this? And my mom would just throw it in this subfolder, right? Didn't think about it, just threw it in this subfolder. So after about 7 or 8 years of this, my mom takes on the project to print out all of these family history stories. So she prints out like 7 or 8 copies. I mean, these are thick. These are hundreds of pages. She has a couple of copies for her siblings and a couple other family members, and kind of compiles it of, here's a volume of our family history. It took no planning, no effort. It was just, here's a funny story that someone wrote down. I'm throwing in a subfolder, and at some point in the future, I'm going to print it. There's no text to it. There's no context to it, right? It's just, but it's the email, so you can see who sent it and who's talking, and this email thing. So then a couple years more go by, and she does a second volume, right? So I've learned a lot about my family through these stupid emails, right? This printed word of what's your family doing, right? That is family history, right? That is connecting with your roots, connecting with who you are, and making it known to your family. So with that as a premise, I'm going to jump back to our list that we talked about before. The things that you're good at, how can you take these talents that you have and these things that you're good at and relate them to family history and temple work, right? Let's just throw some examples. Video editing. Take videos, take pictures of your family, put it together. Family Search has awesome stuff where you can load videos and pictures and memories and stuff into Family Search. Send it to your family. Art, right? Can you make art? Can you make portraits of your family? Can you take the art from, or take pictures from your family and put them together? Planning, right? Delegating, right? Hey, can you plan a temple trip? Can you delegate to your family? Hey, we're going to do temple baptism. We have a bunch of names that we need to get done. Let's plan it. Let's do it. Singing. Maybe some of you have kids or grandkids who don't know that you sing, or don't know that you're good at art, or don't know the things you're good at. Record yourself, right? Let your kids and your grandkids know about that stuff. That's the stuff they're going to want to know. My dad used to be an avid journaler, right? He'd get just plain notebooks from Walmart or whatever, and he would journal every day. And it's the most benign, boring stuff. I went to Raley's today. I bought this and this and this, and it's in chicken scratch. You can't read it, right? So eventually we're gonna have to have him translate it. But he would use it as a way to win arguments because he's really into dates. He remembers dates and facts. And he began to argue with my mom about when such and such thing happened or when somebody got baptized. And he would, this is my family, you have to be right. So he would go dig through these journals for hours until you find, oh yeah, this is from 1994 to 1996. I'm gonna go to the month. He's like, yeah, see, I wrote down, I went to the store that day and so did this. Now, he never really won the argument. Like, you don't win the argument with your wife when you do that, right? But that's his contribution to family history. Like, he writes all this stuff down. Maybe some of it's not super valuable, and it's not maybe the stuff as his kid that I want to know, but there's a lot of stuff in there that it's little stuff that he thought was important. What did he want to talk about? What are the things that were important to him? And so, since like I said, my mom's a typist, basically, she types really fast. She did a thing where she had my dad record. So this is 20 years ago. She bought a little tape recorder, and she would just ask my dad questions. She would do an interview, and they did it over a couple of months, so it wasn't overwhelming. And it would just be, hey, tell me about high school. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And my dad would just talk. And so then my mom took the little, the micro cassettes, and she typed it all up. So we have a history of my dad, basically, up until that point that they did the interview. So there's all these things, all these activities, all these skills that you guys have that you can use for family history and temple, right? It's not just a big part of temple and family history is, yes, we need to do indexing, right? We need to get the dates and information and do all that stuff. For many of you who maybe have been in the church for a long time and you're kind of looking on your family search and like, well, I don't know, most of the work is done, right? You do some cousin branches over here, but a lot of the temple work has been done. One, what do your kids and grandkids and your cousins know about you, right? Do they really know your story? What else can be done for your family history? I'm going to share a story. So I'm just looking at the time because that clock is deadly wrong. My mom and her parents were baptized in 1964. My grandpa got baptized first, and then, my grandpa was taking the missionary lessons, and my mom loved her dad, and she would do anything for him. She didn't really know what the missionaries were teaching. She was 10. It was like whatever. But she would do anything for her dad. And her dad really wanted to be baptized with his daughter and his wife. And one of their daughters had already been baptized. And so my mom agreed to be baptized. So she was baptized when she was 10. They never really went to church as a strong family. She loved seminary as a kid, but they didn't really get along with people in the ward. They had a lot of conflicts. And so her parents stopped going to church fairly quickly. And then when my mom turned 18, she moved here and she kind of stopped going to church. So fast forward, you're talking like 1985, my grandpa's dying, and they have some very diligent home teachers assigned. So the home teachers go over and they say, hey, we want to talk to, brother and sister James or whatever. And my grandma goes to the door and she's like, my husband is sick. He's dying. Please, basically in a nice way, please go away. Like, we don't want to deal with you right now. And they said, well, we really like to talk to Brother James. Now, my grandma, being a staunch feminist, was like, okay, like, you're not going to talk to me. Okay. So my grandfather shuffles from the bedroom, very sick, and says, yes, please go away. All right. So about a week later, this is how the story goes. A week later, their bishop calls and says, hey, if you don't want any visits from members of the church, maybe you shouldn't be members of the church anymore and remove your records from the church. Now, I have a very strong opinion about that, but whatever, that's what happened. And he said, yeah, fine, maybe we shouldn't. And so they sent paperwork or whatever, and my grandparents signed it, whatever. So a few months goes by, my grandpa dies. My mom, who's a young mother, there's 3 little kids, not active in the church, right? She's helping her mom go through paperwork, and they get the letter from Salt Lake that says that her parents' records have been removed from the church. They're no longer on the records of the church. So it really made my mom bitter, right? Just the whole experience. My mom was very bitter. So I've told you before, my mom wasn't very active in the church. She didn't go to church for about 20 years. So in 1993, my aunt decides that the records need to be done because they're not members anymore. They need to take their names and rebaptize them. So part of it gets done. Oakland Temple doesn't record it. It's this comedy of errors that happens, right? So a couple years ago, so in 2016, I'm looking on Family Search and I'm looking at my grandparents. It says the ordinances aren't done, but you can't do them. It says ordinance available. I've never seen that. So I messaged Family Search online and I say, hey, what does this mean? And they do the research and they come back and they say, well, basically so and so and so and so had their records removed from the church. So you can't, that was their wish. So you can't just do their work for them because they're not members of the church. And if you want to dispute it, you have to write a letter to the first presidency. But you have to be direct descendant. So I talked to my mom. I didn't know this story. I didn't know any of that had happened. So I talked to my mom and say, hey mom. So she tells me the whole story. And I said, well, you're a direct descendant. Can you please write a letter to the first presidency and fix this? And so she kind of hemmed and hawed and she didn't do it. So 2020 happens, the pandemic, it's shut down. I'm going through like, what can I do? Like, we're not going to church, right? What can I do for family history? And there was a conference talk that talked about family history. And I was like, I'm feeling that spirit of Elijah. I don't feel it that often, but I'm like, I got to do something. Like there's something is wrong. I have to do something, right? So I messaged the people again and they kind of confirmed the same thing. So I go to my mom and I said, Mom, do you mind if I write the letter? And she's like, please do. It makes me so angry. I'm still bitter about it. Like my mom has been active for a long time. She's cool, but it still made her mad. And she's like, I can't sit down and write the letter. I said, okay. I'm a people person. I can do this, right? So there's some steps you have to follow. You have to print out a pedigree chart showing that you're related to the person, XYZ things. And then it's like you have to verify who you are basically. And then you write a letter to the first presidency. I've never written a letter to the office of the first presidency before. Like, I don't know what to do. So, I just do like a business letter. So it's like, yeah, office of first presidency, Salt Lake address. And I put my parents' names and their family search record, and I kind of just tell the story. The same story I just told you, I tell them what happened. And I say, I don't think my grandparents understood what removing their records from the church really meant. I think there's a big miscommunication. Their whole family is active in the church. We've served missions. We've served in a billion callings. The gospel of Jesus Christ has been a really big blessing in our life. Can their records be restored? Can their blessings be restored in the temple? Like what needs to happen? So it's the pandemic. I'm thinking it's going to take a long time. 6 weeks later, I get an email from the church and I get a phone call. It's like, hey, we sent you an email. It's like, thank you very much, Brother White. All this stuff has been restored. So now my grandparents, their original baptism dates are restored in the system, and it shows that the sealing that had been done later on after they had passed away was valid. And so, right, I don't know. Now my job is to do the work. I don't know if my grandparents accepted the gospel totally and if they wanted it done. That's not my call. My job is to just do the work, and they get to use their agency to choose what they want to do. Right? That was my contribution at that time to temple and family history work. Right? It wasn't indexing. I've tried indexing, terrible at it. I can't do it. Right? This was my contribution of there's something in my line, there's something in my family history that needs to get fixed, that needs to get done. What can I do about it? That was my contribution to temple and family history. I use the talents that I have, right? I can be patient. If I got to write a million letters, right? And probably not a good church topic, but Shawshank Redemption, right? Andy's writing 1,000 letters, right, to get money for his library, right? Like I can be patient. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'll write 1,000 letters, right? That was my contribution at that time. So this is what we're talking about. I know I've been talking a long time. I apologize. But at the bottom of that same section, that talk from Elder De Hoyos, he says, "Dear brothers and sisters, the construction of temples has been in any dispensation a sign of the true Church of Jesus Christ. After the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple in 1893, President Wilford Woodruff encouraged the members of the church to find the records of their ancestors and to record their genealogy by going as far back as possible in order to bring the names into the temple and perform the ordinances of salvation and exaltation." That is why we do family history work. It's to get our family to the temple. Just like it is why we do baptisms here, why we have missionary work. It's not to get baptized, it's not to get into the building here, right? I love that you guys are here in the building today. But that's not the point. The point is to be here so that you can get to the temple. That's the point. right? Those are the blessings. He wants to seal you as families. He wants you to be happy eternally, not just on Sunday, for a couple of hours, right? Now it's only 2 hours instead of 3 hours. So if you're happy, only happy the last time. Brother White.
A couple things. Well, for one thing, add, for those who don't know how to do the work, we've got a person that sits between the bishop's office, the clerk's office, and Mr. Lynn.
And we're going to talk about her in just a second.
And the other thing is that for instance, when I'm not doing my own work, which is quite my the family search, without going into a lot of detail, will generate names from our ward and our state. So now you can take it to go card. The opportunity to work. First, the one to that is going to pick one, brother Miller's talk for a second. Out there. Because otherwise, it's going to come out weird, but otherwise we're cursed. Because we cannot be saved without our ancestors. That's what it says in the last two verses of the Old Testament. We cannot be saved without them.
So the blessings of the temple are not just for us; they are for them. So one time in a lesson, I compared it to this. Right? Sometimes we talk about going to the temple, and for those that have been to the temple, we talk about going to the temple, maybe to do an endowment session, and we talk about, oh, I feel the Spirit, and I feel so good there. I feel good in the temple, right? But it's kind of like I compare it to going on a roller coaster without paying an entrance fee. Right? You want the benefit of going on the roller coaster. You want the benefit of going to the temple and feeling the Spirit, but you didn't pay the price to get there. You didn't do the work to actually get the name. Someone else, maybe in Georgia, we'll say the country, or probably not the country. We'll say the state of Georgia. Maybe they were doing the Lindsays, right? They're doing their family history work in Tennessee, right? They submit names. It goes into the system. You here in California, you're like, hey, I don't have any names ready. I'm going to the temple on a Friday night with Dave, my wife. Temple issues us a name, and it happens to be from the Lindsays, right? And you go to the temple and you do an endowment session, and you feel really good about yourself. You're like, yeah. Now the work needs to be done, but you kind of only did half of it, right? And this isn't a guilt trip, right? I don't believe in guilt trips. That's for moms, right? Moms do guilt trips, right? We're not going to do guilt trips here in Elders Quorum. But it's kind of like you want to ride the roller coaster without paying the price. Now that family history work, sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes it's digging in the dirt. I've shared this story before, but my wife's dad is half Filipino. So my wife is a quarter Filipino. A lot of people don't know that because she's very white, right? She's a quarter Filipino. So growing up, they had no records of that part of the family. Her grandma came here in the early, I think in the late 40s. They said she was 18 to get her here. They think she was actually 15. She married her husband, right? 15 or 16. And so at the time when, Rachel's dad was kind of doing family history work, come on in, Brother Cracker. It was really hard to communicate with the Philippines and get records, right? Guess what's happened in the last 10 years? My wife and her dad have made connections with the Filipino side of the family through Facebook. And so there's family that my wife never knew. We're sharing pictures on Facebook. We're getting to know each other. We're able to find parts of my wife's family in the Philippines because of records that they have, and then being able to communicate online, right? The Lord is opening those doors. We found out all these things about my wife's family that we never knew that makes so much sense to her. So her grandma died. Rachel was 7 when her grandma died. And she has these very limited memories of her grandma. She was teaching her how to serve tea to the group of ladies that used to play mahjong. And that was like this very, my wife is tall. And so she said her grandma was about 4'11", Rachel was 7 or 8 and already taller than her grandma. But she's like, I remember her teaching us how to serve tea at their mahjong games or whatever. So we've had a cool experience in the last year. Last year for the state cultural event, we did the Philippines, and Sister Horner, who's from the Philippines, offered to help us out. And so my wife got to have this very cool experience of kind of having a substitute Filipino grandma. And she took the girls over to Sister Horner's house, and they were making Filipino food and had this very cool experience that my wife never really got to have. And it touched her in a way that I don't think she realized it was going to touch her. Now that wasn't maybe family history, but that was my wife getting in touch with who she is and that part of her that she's never been able to be in touch with. And so that's family history. So you guys have all of these talents, right? Parable of the talents. We're not supposed to bury a talent. You guys have talents and skills and abilities. Now it's your job to figure out, how do I use that to benefit my ancestors? What are talents and skills that I have that I can take to the temple, that I can do, right? Maybe your contribution right now to family history work is going to the temple and doing the work for people who can't do it for themselves. Maybe if you're a planner or a delegator, and maybe if you can drive still, I'm going to drive people to the temple and get them there, right? That's a contribution to family history. That's a contribution to temple work. Making sure you have a current recommend. That is your contribution maybe at the moment. It's going to ebb and flow. I think I've told this story before. I know I've been talking a lot. But on my side of the family, on our family history, it goes me, my dad, grandpa, great-grandpa Henry, and we know there's a William. You know how many William Whites there are? Like a bajillion, right? We know Val White has a William White, right? There's a William White that was born in kind of a cool, I can't remember the fort name. It was basically when the troops came west to put down the Mormon rebellion, right? And they set up a fort and then they left. William White was not born, Henry was born there. William was his dad. All you have is his name. So my dad has tried for 30 years to find, like my mom's side and other parts of our family, we have been in the 14, 13, the 1200s. It's kind of crazy. We have like a French line that goes into like the 1300s. The Whites stop at William, right? And you find 1,000 William Whites. So we go on and off. During COVID, my sisters and I had a Zoom meeting, and we talked for 2 hours of things that we knew and things. His wife, William's wife, her name was Caroline. Caroline had 4 different husbands at different times. And what happens in Family Search, because it's a wiki, people can merge records. That's the frustrating part of a Family Search, is people can do stuff even though you've already done the research, and then they merge stuff, and you're like, no. So there was like 4 different William Whites that got merged into one William White, and it was all messed up again. So we've decided that we're always going to keep hard copies of stuff because you can't trust digital copies sometimes. But every year or two, we get frustrated that we can't find William, and so we go back to the drawing board of how are we going to find where William came from, right? Someone linked some stuff in Family Search that that they think they found William, but it doesn't really match, and so we're kind of going back to the drawing board. Anyway, it's like hitting your head against a brick wall, and so what we do is we stop. We take a break for a year or two, right? You don't want to make William wait, but he's waited a long time. He can wait a little longer while we do other stuff, right? When it's his time to be found, he's going to help us find him. He will help us find himself. So there are things that can be done, right? Like the story I told before of writing a letter to the first presidency about my grandparents, that because their work needed to get fixed. There are things that you can do now, this week, whether it's recording your own stories, talking to your kids and grandkids, talking to your neighbors, maybe your neighbors. When I was a missionary, we ended up teaching a family because this guy stopped us on the street and he said, hey, my 8-year-old granddaughter has to do an assignment for school about family history, and I hear the Mormons do family history. I said, yes, sir, we do. And so we started teaching them the gospel, and they were baptized because of that, right? There are opportunities that you guys have in your life to do family history and to do temple work. And as Brother Elder De Hoyo said, it's the same thing, right? Going to the temple and doing family history work. It's all the same because, like Brother White brought up earlier, we are connecting our families. I know that you, brethren, love your families. You love your wife, and your kids, and your grandkids, and your cousins, and your friends, and that you want to be with them forever. And that's what temple and family history work is. That's what you guys are doing. And it can include a ton of different things. It doesn't have to look a certain way. We only have a couple minutes left. I apologize that I talked so long. So Sister Lynn, like Brother Wyatt was saying, Sister Lynn is our ward family history consultant. Thank you for, I couldn't think of the word. So she kind of came up with these. I passed them out a couple weeks ago, and then I didn't collect them because I got distracted. So all it is a real quick survey of what you personally need help with family history, right? I'm just going to pass them out. I have some pens. If you take 5 minutes, we have 5 minutes left. Take a second, and if there's something that you need help with, she gave some suggestions there, but then there's a box for other. If you don't know where to start, or if you want to use those suggestions, Sister Lind and our Temple Family History Group, Brother Farnworth is part of it. Brother Lloyd's here. There, I was like, couldn't find him. They are trying to figure out ways to help us, one, do family history, but two, get to the temple more often, right? Brother White. I got pens if you want.
The other river temple is going on this fall, and the Sacramento temple is a whole bunch of work. So also, we do classes of worker, other folks, sisters,
So if you want to work in the temple, you don't have to be retired. You don't have to be old. You can work in the temple if you have a couple hours a week. Talk to Bishop Black. You can work in my cousin, when she was in her late 30s, was working in the laundry at the temple for a couple hours a week. And she said it was great. You're doing laundry for people, but it's an awesome experience. In other De Hoyos talk, we're going to just do one more thing. It says at the end of family history work, it says, the Lord encourages us as members of the church to, like we talked about, preserve our own family history, to learn from our ancestors, and to make the necessary arrangements for them to receive the ordinances of the gospel in the temple and to help them progress along the covenant path, which will bless them as eternal family. So preserve your own family history. If you don't have a journal, that's okay. Like we talk a lot in the church about journaling. A lot of that doesn't work for a lot of us, right? But do you post a lot on social media? Go back and highlight that stuff and save it somewhere, right? Do you take a lot of pictures? I know my wife's phone has like 12,000 pictures on it that we need to save somewhere before we lose it, right? Her phone's dying. We're going to lose them. That's 12,000 pictures. Like all of you have a bajillion pictures on your phone probably. Load them to Family Search. Put them somewhere. Sign up for a service to print them. Share them with your family. Those stories that you have, record them. On my iPhone, there's a voice memo thing where I can just talk and make, do voice memos. Record your family history on your own. Transcribe it. Send it somewhere. Talk to your cousins that are still, maybe a lot of your family's passed away. Whoever's still alive, talk to people. The church did a thing a couple years ago, I don't remember what it's called, but basically they gave suggestions on how to do this. And it's like, put a cardboard box by your front door, and every time you find a memory or some kind of family history thing, you throw it in the box. And maybe every couple of months you go, hey, I could tell a story out of this. And you tell a story. Chuck.
Well, is there a way to scan like pictures and stuff like that onto the family history stuff?
Yes. And Sister Lind can probably help you with that. I know like if you don't have like a scanner, a lot of times you can just take a picture with your phone and upload that picture right into Family Search. There's apps that you can download that are free where you can actually scan stuff. But yes, talk to Sister Lind. Anything that you have that's family history related can be uploaded or put into Family Search so that there's a constant record of it and other people have access to it. We're going to end on this. He says, Let us remember that family history is more than just looking for names, dates, and places. It is uniting families and feeling the joy that comes from extending to them the ordinances of the gospel. So we talk about doing missionary work. We talk about sharing the gospel with people. Doing family history work and doing temple work is extending those blessings and doing missionary work with those who are no longer here. It is a blessing. And the blessing that you get, right? It's kind of like doing a blessing to get, doing something good to get something back. And sometimes we think that's bad. I think sometimes it's okay, right? I'm going to do family history so that I feel good, right? I'm going to do family history so my ancestors aren't mad at me, right? I'm going to do family history so I can go to the temple with a clear conscience and go, hey, I'm doing the work. I'm trying to do all that I can, right? My oldest sister adopted 2 kids. So she has our own family history, and then she has her adopted kids who are, 2 different biological families. She has an extended amount of temple work and family history work that she can do, right? Look for those opportunities. Look for what temple family history work means for you in your life. The Spirit's going to tell you, right? And it's different for all of us in different seasons of our life. Some of us are like, hey, I'm going to be an indexer right now. I know someone in Ward before who would, index 40, 50,000 names a year. She loved it. Just blah, blah, blah. I tried 2. I tried to index 2 things, and I was like, I can't. This isn't my jam. Can't do it, right? There are other talents that you, brethren, have that you can take to the temple, right? You are putting that on the altar. What are the things that I am good at that I can offer God? And we're going to end on that. And in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Brethren, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being here. There are members of our ward who are sick, who have gone through things recently, and you, brethren, are just taking care of business and visiting those people that need to be visited, doing the service that needs to be done. And I love that, and I appreciate that. If you visit someone who is sick or give a blessing, just shoot me a quick email or a text to let me know so I know what's going on. But thank you for ministering. Thank you for taking care of the people in our ward. I love that. We'll close. Other Lindsay, would you like to give us a closing prayer? Thank you.
Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we are so thankful to be called thy sons and to be here together in this priesthood court. Ask your blessing upon each person that's here, that they'll feel a greater measure of thy Spirit, that you'll go with them, that you'll enliven in each of them the divine spark that they are as fathers, that they will father and love those around them in all places, to share that love with all that they come in contact with, and all may be filled that love through them. Lord, bless them as they research their fathers that came before them and their mothers, that they will build unite their families. Bless our teacher for his good lesson today and his family. We pray for these things. We pray that God be with us. We thank you for the gospel. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Before you leave, if you have like a minute, fill out that form and just throw it down right here. I'll give them to Sister Lind so she has it. Oh, yes. I got a whole box of pens that I need.
I never care when it's printing my handwriting, but I'll do my best.
And as a member of the church, you get a free subscription to Ancestry, which is amazing.
I got
A bunch of others. Yeah.
Let me steal a pen.